Hey, Ike here, and today I'm drawing page 9 of First Sun and Sword.
Okay, so it has been a holiday week at the time of recording this, Thanksgiving 2021, and had uh, a cold in my house and extra things I needed to do, and obviously the holiday. So um, I feel like my head hasn't been in the game as much as usual, so I'm not quite sure what I want to talk about in this video. Um, but and I know it'll be released at a different time. There's a delay there, but I still want these videos to catalog my experience at this time during this week. Okay, so I think I'll just comment on what I'm doing here, and maybe I'll think of a good topic to discuss this week. Um, so I had the thumbnail, which I forgot to show in this video, but a very simple thumbnail. And the large bug, the beetle, is falling to the ground, and as its head hits the sand kicks up right in front of Farah and Sword. So that's what I'm fleshing out here with the rough pencils. Um, is where can I place these shapes? Now, the camera angle here does distort a bit. So in previous videos, I had the camera more dead on, so there wouldn't be that distortion of the perspective, like the right side of the page being farther from the camera. But then I noticed that my hand was blocking your view of the pencil or pen as it touches the paper. So there'd be times that my hand was completely in the way of the camera, and you couldn't see anything for 10 seconds or something until I moved my hand. And that doesn't seem very useful. So I have now opted for putting the camera at an angle like this. So it'll distort it a bit, but you'll get a better view of what I'm doing. Okay, so yeah, figuring out where to place the legs and the perspective, how the sand is going to kick up in front of the bug's head, but not completely hide the shape of the head. I went ahead and fleshed out the front two characters, but later I realized that they're too small. I believe that'll be a little later, unless I already erased that. So like the scale of the bug to the people, I had just a little idea in mind, and it hasn't been super clear, but the kind of mid section just before the hand claw part of the arm of the front arms, my sort of scale I'm using is, well, that the length of that is about the length of a 6 foot tall plus sword. So I think I drew them a little too small on that, but on that first panel. But it's just, yeah, it's kind of hard when you have something so big and then compared to people small. But I think it'll work. There, I just erased that's dust being kicked up by when the bug fell, and I realized it created a tangent that that dust cloud on the left sort of aligned with that on the right, and that's confusing. So that's why I erased it there. So what we have here is the hole in the bug's head that Sun had punched through, and he punched through so much that he sort of fell into the brain guts, and now he stands up out of it. So the first panel there was the hole, and then him standing up out of it, and then Sword's response. And that is the end of this scene. We're going to cut from here to them entering Crocodile City. This might hit on like a writing point, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do writing videos. Ooh, before I say that, notice my phone is there. in my hand in the bottom right corner, you'll see my phone is up. I'm pulling up previous pages of the of this comic so I can see how Sun looks and the other characters. Here it's Sun, and I'm just not memorizing very well just how lanky he is, how long he is, how big his head is. And yeah, there's also like I'm kind of cartooning the human figure, but it's yeah, I'm just trying to get that memory, and I think I will. I think eventually I will just have it in my mind. Okay, he's this sort of lanky 11-year-old, and then I can just go with it. But even between page to page, I feel like it's changed a bit. That he's looked a little younger, and then maybe a little older. And I'm trying to find just that right sweet spot to stick with. So that's why I'm referencing. Is this is one of those spots I'm trying to really pay attention to get ironed out soon and get this correct for this for the ongoing comic. I really love being expressive with my faces. You can kind of see there he's kind of wide-eyed and like, whoa, that just happened kind of look. And I really I think that's something that is true of all my comics, that the characters feel alive. They're expressing, their acting is good. So I do definitely enjoy that, and it's kind of interesting when it comes to more simple line work that I do, to make sure that there's that life in the faces, and to try to simplify more and more, but keep that life. There was an interesting challenge with this comic with the eyes. I wasn't sure how much detail to put in the eyes, because I knew that they're typically pretty small on the page, and I'm not putting a lot of small details in this comic. So if I put a lot of detail into the eyes, it's not gonna fit, especially because I only use one size ink pen, so I can only put so much detail. So in this comic, I opted for very beady eyes, very kind of small dots to represent the iris and all that, the pupil and iris, and it basically looks like just a fine pupil in a white eye. But that, if I found, obviously if I don't put pupils at all, then you lose a lot of the expression. You won't be able to show where people are, looking and how they're feeling and stuff. But if I make those pupils too large or too detailed, then it gets more cartoony, I guess, and doesn't fit with the rest of the style. So I think I've settled on the way I'm gonna do it, that I suspect is gonna become part of my style, like more recognizable. In previous comics, it's kind of been not a staple, but I think it will be from now on. So yeah, I think here's a panel where you have the sort of talking heads, the foreground figure taking up about 2/3 of the panel, and then a figure standing behind them, taking up that other space, both looking dead at the camera. I don't like flat, simple panels like that. And you can see like those lists of like, here's all the different camera angles you can do. You got the shot, reverse shot, and so on. And when you have people talking to each other, all the different camera angles you can throw in. But those can be executed in a way that are just cartooning, and to the point of it feels like, I don't know, a trope. I'm not sure what to call it, but I try not to utilize that rigidly. And so that bottom panel is an example to me of just the really straightforward, looking right at the camera panel layout there. But it's partly for comedic effect. It just felt like the right move this time. And part of that is I'm writing as well as directing, so I like to keep. I try not to have talking heads. Like, can they be doing something while they're talking? Are they walking? Are they drinking tea? Just anything. Any extra things that can be going on at the time of the talking. And I typically don't have a lot of heavy dialogue anyways. But yeah, that's something that's, I'm not sure how else to word it, but I'm even thinking of the Cat and the Fiddle comic I did. Well, even Gray Judge, my first comic, there was something more organic about the camera positions, the way I framed the figures, that didn't just feel like shot, reverse shot, and simple framing. It felt alive. And here I have what should be not a straight down view of from the sky, bird's eye view, but slightly at an angle, trying to capture the hole in the bug's head, and down beneath it in its shadow is Sword and Farah. And again, that scale, like in my mind, the bug's head was a little above the ground, so it's in perspective they're going to be smaller there, but really maybe they could have been a little larger than that in comparison technically. But again, if it works, it works. So I think it's doable. Looking at it now, I think, I noticed it at the time too, when I was inking it, that the bug's head looks a little flat, like top down, and I probably should have put that more at an angle, and it may have looked more accurate that way. The way I executed it was more like graphic. It was like not too reality, too perspective, but really just broke up that panel, like made a clear line shape that separated the bug on the left and them. So I mean, it did some things effectively, but not exactly what I was intending. Yeah, I think here it looks like I erased them, like I was saying I would do, that I thought I had done. So yeah, I erased them and tried to make them a little larger. Yeah, here we go. Because I realized they are, again, too small in comparison to the bug. With these figures, I've been noticing how I'm trying to get a little more cartoony and loose with the posing of the figures, or even like puppeted, like almost a puppet-like posing. And it's just a fine line to play with, because a more realistic posing can be nice, but it can also look stiff. It can slow you down. It can be less expressive. But if I get too cartoony with my posing, then maybe it looks a little too silly, not serious enough, especially like for depending on the content of the book. And this one is a little more serious of a book. So I guess I think every artist kind of has to play with that that dynamic, and where do they want to fall in that as they go. but I've found I'm trying to keep it loose with these poses, uh, and it seems to be better that way. So I actually, just there I made the bug's butt and wings a little smaller, because they're further towards the horizon. They're going to be in perspective. They're going to be smaller than the head, and just refining some of these things. Okay, and now we are inking. Yeah. So it's going pretty quick for me. I did all this in 1 day, or was it 2? Sometimes I do it in 2 days, and now I don't recall. I think, yeah, this was 2 days. I broke it up and came back to it to ink it the next day. But overall, it's definitely not more than 3 hours per page, but probably more like 2.5. Yeah, very rough pencils that I'm refining here with these choices I make of where to put the inks. It's part of what I'm have to play with here, is like, if I get it really nailed down before I go to ink, then that takes a lot more time. And when I feel my best, when I feel like I'm tuned into the right way to be, and there's something faster about it, that I want it to happen quickly. I want to be able to produce these pages quickly and get books out in a timely manner, like tell a story. That's why I'm doing this, is to tell a story. So if it takes forever, then it's not serving the purpose that I have, the passion that I have. Yeah, there I even moved the cracked line there. I think I looked up at the previous panel and saw kind of the shape of that hole in the bug's head, and tried to recreate it in the inks without even the pencils being in the same place. On this boy, there's a lot of texture. Like these curved lines are guts and stuff, like brain matter that's on him. But I'm using such a simple color palette and less detail, so it's hard to convey that. We'll see when I color this later, maybe later today, and then we'll see if I can make it clear that that's what's on him. But I think it'll work. And now the brush pen. It really is a lot faster than dipping in ink like I used to do. There's no pausing to dip. You can just keep going. So this is a panel that has a good amount of layers to the foreground, mid, and background, and it's always an interesting sort of challenge of how much blacks to put in. And so I'm using these blacks as both shadow and form and color, almost like to indicate value. But there's going to be more contrast in things that are closest to the camera, closest to the eye. But it's also true that things in the background can be darker. I mean, looking into a dark room, that'll be black. So, and it can be the case with where the light source and the shadows are in these things too. But it's like, if there's too much black in the way I indicate form and shadow on the back part of that bug, And then it's sort of an equal amount that I'm indicating at the front of the bug and at the figures in front of the bug. That is, it's going to look kind of flat. And so you have to treat it differently. There's going to be less blacks, less form indication through those black shapes and shadows and so on at the further away from the camera. So here I am, speed being important. I can see that I kind of messed it up. So that horn, I threw a black shape on the horn to indicate both the where the light source is, the shadow, and the form of the horn. That's what that top left shape is, but it is not very good. It is not true to where the light source is. It's not indicating the form very well. So me like trying to shorthand and cartoon that, I think has turned out not so great. And later I go back and put in whiteout. I'm sure as soon as I laid it on there, I knew that I'd made a mistake. And here I am trying to fix it a bit. But I knew it was still not right, but I didn't fix it right then. Because right now I'm just inking. I'm not going to stop and get out whiteout and play with it. But I knew that I would have to go back and try to clean that up later. Yeah, here I didn't figure out the shadows very well, where they would fall on the body and the cape, and again, making that guesswork in the ink's face. And that's not all bad. As I've said in previous videos, I want to be fast, and I want to make those decisions in ink phase and just get better at that. And I am getting better at it. There's less and less. There's very little whiteout that I need to use, especially on when I know that I'm, focused well and had a good day. And that's good. Yeah, here's an example of trying to simplify. I mean, no matter how much detail an artist is putting in, unless they're doing like realism, they're simplifying things and trying to imply things. And with his hair here, the amount of reflective, the highlights I put in, the strands of hair, the shape of the hair, great amount of simplicity occurring here. But how an artist, when you're newer at art, and I think comics is a great way to expose yourself to having to draw a lot of different things where you would learn this about yourself. But when you're new at art, you might think more about how do I draw a face, how do I keep things in proportion, and so on. But over time, you find how to treat different situations of like lighting situations, texture, reflectiveness, like particles and dust that might be in the way too of light, just all the different sorts of elements. Like imagine a video game that's 10-20 years old, like how rough the images look, or even just 10 years ago, and then it gets more and more realistic where there's atmosphere and little dust particles in the air. But it's kind of like that with, as an artist drawing these things, how are you going to imply that greater amount of information? And so how you choose to treat different situations of lighting and reflectiveness and texture and so on really starts to be what your style is. Like that's one of the things that really makes an artist stand out to me, or makes like sort of their signature, is how do they treat those things. And there's the finished page. I feel like that turned out pretty effective, even if it was a little out of proportion, like scale of them to the bug. And I like how this scene ends. We get to see everyone's faces and reactions to what's just unfolded. Really ends a scene well, I think, that way. So thank you for watching. This was page number 9. It's the end of the first scene in First Sun and Sword. In the description, you'll find a link to the web comic of this. You can read the whole thing there. You can watch my other videos. And then in the next one, we'll be jumping into the beginning of the next scene in Crocodile City, entering the city. Catch you next time.